Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is November 19th, 2024, and you're listening, watching the Daily Ash Show live. And today we're getting all into the hidden psychology of a viral AI sensation. So, why did ChatGPT become so popular so fast, despite the technology not really even changing that much? Why have some other AI tools risen to the top of the ranks, where others with maybe potentially better technology have floundered or perhaps folded already at this point? We've certainly seen some AI tools that have just not made the cut despite having all sorts of investment. These days getting $100 million Series A is not any indication that your solution is going to work or make it. So with us today to have that conversation, to talk about the blog that inspired this, we have a good group today. We have Beth, Jyunmi, Karl, Andy, and I'm Brian. It's always good to see all five of us here. Not all five of us, obviously. Aaron and Robert aren't here, but these are the five mainstays are here. And today's topic, rather, our show was sort of inspired. Karl, I believe you had initially shared this back in our Slack community, but it was from this. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to pull it up on my screen because I want to give credit where credit is due. From this blog, and it's from this website called Every, which I haven't personally heard about, but it's from Ria Perowit, and it says Ria focuses on research-driven storytelling in tech. She writes about going from 0 to 1 with AI in her monthly column, Learning Curve. So this is the article that we are sort of, having this conversation about, and we're going to kind of dive into some different parts of it. But we could certainly share that link as well. We'll get that up in the comments so you guys can check out the full version of it. But let's just kind of kick this off. Like, Karl, I know you had initially shared this, and so obviously usually we'll go to the person who like, hey, I think this is a good idea for a show. So what was it initially that made you think, hey, let's talk about this? This is an interesting topic.
The reason why it brought to my attention is because this kind of connected to what we talked about yesterday, right? Is AI slowing down? And part of that reason was people have this expectation of how fast AI, is going, and then what the AI bubble believes should be happening, or if one tech does this, then the other ones aren't doing anything, and we want more. And it's this like never ending want for consumption of the latest thing, and kind of AI has been feeding that. But this kind of brings it a little bit back. So in this article, there is a term. It's called the Unified Theory of Acceptance and Use of Technology. So it consolidates a body of research how humans integrate new technology in their work and lives. And we're really focused on, there's 4 elements here when it explains the variables of how humans think when embracing new technology: performance expectancy, effort expectancy, social influence, and facilitating conditions. So let's kind of go through each one. The first one is performance expectancy, is the degree which the user believes the new tech will be useful to them. So this is pretty straightforward. Obviously, ChatGPT, directly useful to, at the very minimum, hey, I don't have to create these dumb emails. I can create the email, or I can create these messages, right? So straightforward. It's pretty easy. I can create that. And because in the article says, because the large language model is versatile, like it's super useful, right? That's kind of the performance expectancy. I think the effort expectancy, this is the definition, is perceived ease associated with the use of product. So because I was involved, and I'm still involved in the crypto space, it was interesting that blew up, because crypto NFTs, outside of like the monkeys and all the stupid things that came with it, it's actually pretty complex, right? And you have to understand what, smart contracts, to understand the blockchain, to understand how that all comes together. If you actually think about the tech and not about just trying to make money or scam people out of money, there's a lot of things that go into it, and all the chains and whatnot. But versus a large language model, there's a lot that goes underneath it. But for the regular person, I can speak, I can type, and it does stuff for me, right? pretty straightforward. There's low efforts that you have to go through, and not much understanding. The third one is social influence, is the extent to which a user perceives that other people, specifically those whose opinion they hold in high regard, believe that they should use the new technology. I like to call this the Jones effect. So way back when I did door-to-door sales, one of the sales techniques was you put this little certificate in your pocket and then you put it out and you'd be like, hey, your neighbor so-and-so actually bought this. And it actually is a trigger for a lot of people. It's like, oh, if that person bought it, then I should buy it. Or if that person uses it, this influencer uses it, this person I think is an amazing person who influences me, they use it, oh, must be awesome. So the article mentioned perplexity. And I think we've seen that social influence where every single person, especially in the AI space, like perplexity is awesome. Perplexity is awesome. You're like, well, I got to go try this thing because I want to be kind of with the cool kids. And then the final piece, and this the last piece, and then everyone, I'll open the floor, I guess. Facilitating conditions refer to the degree which a user believes there are platforms to voice their concerns and resources to support them as they use a product. And the example they use is Cursor, but I know, Beth, you've mentioned Perplexity and Aravind, and both Cursor, Aravind at Perplexity, even those at Replit, Yasser at Chatbase, Matthew at Respell, I think Jonathan at Cassidy, they're pretty responsive to if you find an issue or something. A lot of these AI founders, obviously, as it grows bigger, it's going to be a lot harder, but it's so easy. Like, hey, I have an issue. You have a Slack channel, you have X, you have Discord, you have that conversation, and usually they fix it. So it's pretty awesome, or they teach you how to do it. So those are the 4 conditions of unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. And it's interesting how they impact like the AI industry in general.
Yeah, and I think the what I get out of it is that, you know, this is what maybe the newest, you know, AI products, services, SaaS models, whatever, are striving for. But you don't necessarily have to have all 4 of them in order to be successful, or perhaps you used to have some of them and not. And the one that comes to mind to me is Facebook. Before Meta, before Facebook owned Instagram and stuff like that, one of the biggest things that you will hear from people, LinkedIn, I would say another one, social media, let's go back to 2015 when people were still able to basically build an Etsy on Facebook. This was before paid ads. I may have to date back a little bit earlier than that, but that's about when I was running ads, maybe even a little earlier. Let's say like 2013-ish, somewhere in that range. You could basically build an entire ecosystem for yourself on Facebook, basically for free. And then sort of overnight, Facebook was like, you know what? Nope, we have an ad structure here. We need to make money. And now we're just blocking your organic content, right? There's just no way to grow. And I watched as people lost their livelihoods, like their main sources of income through that. The reason I bring that up is in terms of what's going on here is that one of the biggest issues at that time, and still I would say with Facebook, is if something goes wrong, if your profile goes down or whatever, there doesn't seem to be a good, or an ad gets blocked, or you get put in Facebook jail or LinkedIn jail or whatever. There never seems to be a great way for that last section, which is the facilitating conditions. Meaning, like, when has anybody in the last 10 years said, you know what, it blocked my account on Facebook. It clearly wasn't my problem. And in about 30 minutes, I got it fixed and I was back up and running. Usually there's some all call going out. Like if it's on LinkedIn, somebody's like, does anybody know anybody at LinkedIn? I'm getting 0 responses. I'm blocked. I don't know why. It's freaking me out. I'm starting to lose, revenue. Like it's those kind of deals. But you see these new upstarts and they clearly understand that you cannot win if you're not being like some of these modern companies where there is a direct path. In the Ria mentions Cursor in the article, but like you said, there's other examples of that where there has to be a connect path of I can get my problems resolved. I think, Andy, your use case of using was it Replit, where you got the help and got connected to engineers and actively was on a call with engineers, and they're like, hey, not only were they validating you, Andy, and saying your problem matters to us, Like the issue that you're dealing with, albeit one of thousands, matters to us, and we do actually want to fix it. Can we get on a call with you and see if we can work through this together? I don't want to speak for you, Andy, but that can turn you into a lifelong user, or at least the next couple of years user, because you go, hey, you know what? They're not perfect. I am frustrated by maybe what I'm building in Replit, but I do have a support system here, and I do like the way they done it. And if they're doing well in these other categories, like social influence, people, getting on social media and saying, Replit, you got to use it. It's great. It's amazing. If it's fairly easy for you to use, which you've talked to about, and that it meets your performance expectancy, you kind of have a winning combination. You can kind of see why it's working. And again, I don't want to talk for you, Andy, but that's your story kind of makes me think about this, about getting that right level of customer feedback.
Yeah, the high level of attention and responsiveness is a key factor in retention of a new user. So I'm a new user at Replit, and the question is, am I going to continue to be a user? And more importantly, with respect to virality, am I going to tell everybody I know to go try Replit because it really works? And, if you get stuck, you're not going to get, immediate support, but, they are going to be responsive. It could take a little bit of time, but there's going to be somebody who's going to help you get unstuck. So that's confidence inspiring in terms of, investing the time and effort that's necessary to use a new and complicated product. But I want to go back to the math of virality. And, some things can become very viral, but they don't stick. So they can have a bloom. There's a flash, if you will, of adoption, but then people don't use it very much. And so it kind of, it got to a high number of registrations, but in terms of daily active users, that's the key measure. And of course, in this respect, ChatGPT has achieved something that goes way beyond all the others, even despite the fact that there are equally competent, perhaps in some cases, better AIs out there to play with. So what is the difference? What is it that makes for the bloom, and what is it that makes for retention of users and continued introduction to new users? Just a quick note about the math of virality. Like for the initial bloom, in order to get a lot of user trial, you want to have every new user that you acquire, whether through a paid funnel or through the natural introduction, organic introduction to new users, you want that user to generate more than one additional user. That's what makes for exponential virality. If each user generates 1.1 new users, then that will inexorably grow to the point where it really covers the bases. Now, then the question is your product good enough to retain those users as you get there? And I'm going to say one of the things that's helped many of the most viral products is media attention. ChatGPT had the power of being the first, in effect, to deliver a universally accessible AI product to the world. And so every media voice out there had something to say about ChatGPT. That introduced a lot of people to it. But again, we're still at under 10% adoption, right, in the general population. And that's for other reasons, not because they haven't ever even heard of ChatGPT. I think most people have heard of ChatGPT at this point.
I wanted to jump in terms of, I think like the chat. I think what we're seeing too, and I'm just going to put into what I'm seeing from a business perspective. Just the people that we're working with, yes, people know ChatGPT, but I think everyone here has said something to the degree, or you've known people who's like, I've tried it, it's okay, but then I just went on with my day, right? So that's why whenever I see any of these numbers that, the major AI labs or Microsoft or the consulting agencies and like Deloitte's and McKinsey, it's like, what are you actually measuring? Are you measuring usage, actual regular usage? As like, are people using it every day? Or hey, I've tried it a couple times and it's okay, helps me a bit, do stuff here and there, and that's it. But also, if we've noticed, let's take, for example, just OpenAI stuff. You've got Canvas, you've got advanced voice, you've got the work with apps. Every single one of these things on its own is pretty amazing, but outside of that AI bubble, most people don't even know about that. And I feel like we're in a place now where features get pumped out, pumped out, but no one actually, there in AI, there is no instruction how to use it. It's pretty much out there and we have to figure it out. Or kind of like Microsoft has a defined way, but that defined way is like, that doesn't make any sense. And it's very specific to business use. So I'm just trying to see, like, what do you think of that with every single feature? Let's say Anthropic comes out with a prompt improver, their projects, their like every single one has something that comes out and it won't be reported on the news. And even going back to this article, the social influence, we're just influencing each other. There's no actual outside of Perplexity. We're in, like, Perplexity has yesterday their one-shot click they just announced, but maybe a tech crunch would report on it, but outside of that, like, who would know? So I'm curious, with every single feature, it's not reaching because there's too many. And so, like Runway and 11 Labs, and it just keeps going. Are we in a deluge of so much stuff that it doesn't matter anymore?
Well, yes, I'm going to say, just in terms of the speed at which things are coming out. But I also think it's really interesting that the conversation starts with ChatGPT, because I believe that they are doing both sides of this, right? It was really easy to use in the beginning because it's just a chat. It feels like texting or a search engine. And then they tend to release things and then not pay attention to them or communicate about them, right? So, oh, cool, there are these amazing things called plugins. We're totally going to use plugins, and then we're not going to support it at all, right? And unlike Perplexity, unlike Aravind, like, there's very little interaction with the people who make that decision. Where did that decision come from? Like, they're not easy to engage with, particularly, I think, because they are they're techs, they're researchers. They're not necessarily their prime reason to make a nice experience for users. Whereas Perplexity, I think, is actually trying to make a nice experience for users. So having said that, don't like the shop. Nope.
I haven't used it
Sorry.
yet. I was gonna try using that today and see if I could do take a picture of something and see if it shows up and all that. But we'll leave that for maybe tomorrow's news show. And we can talk all about that. I want to go back to this idea of, like, virality and what would it take for some new AI upstart to get there. Now, we can, let's say, for hypothetically, this is not net new technology. There's been some upstarts where there's been a promise of something that nobody has seen before. The humane, right? Some things where people said, like, oh, is that possible? And they're selling on the potential of possibility. I think Rabbit is course correcting a little bit, but we saw that initially with them. Like, it's going to be a different language model. You haven't seen this before. It's a large action model. It's different. We're the ones that have it, right? That kind of thing. But if we take that aside and then you look at other tools, like, let's take something like Justin Feinberg's company, Cassidy. If you don't know Cassidy, you log into Cassidy and it has a lot of, it's supposed to be like a one-stop shop for businesses in terms of what they can do. Now, you can do more fine motor control things, like change out the models you want to use and different things. But ultimately, that's not really what it's meant to be. It's meant to be an easy place for people, businesses, workers to go and be able to quickly do the thing they're trying to do. It's not really about, like, oh, here's the underlying technology. It's about simplifying the technology that's already out there. And Ria points to this and says that OpenAI was, in fact, caught off guard by the virality of ChatGPT as we know it, meaning 2 years ago. Because the tech, as she points out in the article, it's not me saying this, the technology wasn't drastically different from the previous month or the previous several months or whatever. It was that they wrapped it into a chat interface, and people said, oh, this is something familiar. I'm just having a conversation, and everything changed. And the explosion of generative AI has seemingly gone from that point forward. Not to say they kicked it off. Google was already working on things. We know this, but that's sort of that inflection point of where the zeitgeist, the popular, viewpoint of it said, oh, this is something new and novel, even though the technology itself, and she points back at reference points and says, like, the Macintosh computer was not the first to have the technology that it did or have a GUI system, yet they put it in an Apple we know works very hard on the user experience. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What do your friends say about it when they have it in their hands? Like, that's such the Apple way. It's no shock that they've been so successful for so many decades now using that methodology. So, like, to me, when you look at these 4 different areas, like, maybe no, they're pretty good too. I mean, the Genius bars and stuff like that, as far as connectivity and being able to get support, Apple was probably, like, to me, one of the top companies that's still big, that still seems to be doing well in all 4 of these categories. So if you take, like, a Cassidy and you say that's a new upstart, they've had some series, Justin's got some Series A and maybe more than that funding in there, but they don't have novel technology per se. Nothing to take away from Justin and their team, but it's not like they're using the language models and they have a wrapper around that. So how do they be successful? Well, you got to get other people around you to say, hey, Cassidy's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's easy. You log into one place and it has everything you need once you log into there. And so that's the ease of it, right? And it performs it performs the actions that I think it's supposed to perform. I'm expecting when I go in there that it's at least as good as going into ChatGPT, and either it is or it isn't. Like, it's giving me really good results. It's actually making my job easier. That has to be in there. Other people are using it socially. Justin's on social media as the founder of the company. He started on TikTok, or at least that's where I saw him. I'm sure he was on other socials as well, talking about actually developing Cassidy as it was coming to light and being publicly available. He was talking you through the process. This is what we're thinking about. This is what we're doing. So any early adopters were able to be part of the plan. You felt like, oh, I'm part of what Cassidy is building here. I'm the inner group. And so that helps build that initial social proof, because if you get a few people there and they start posting about it and saying, hey, he also has a not influencer, but what's the word I'm looking for? Where you can
referral?
Yeah, like a referral. Yeah, that's not the word I was looking for, but that's it, right? Affiliate. Thank you. I knew I was close. The affiliate to it, or referral program, where now if you really do love Cassidy, and they're not unique to this, but if I have a social presence and I have so many people who trust what I'm saying, or maybe on this show, then of course now we can say, hey, use our affiliate. Like, we love Cassidy, like the Daily I Show does, whatever the case is.
You can go even further back than that, because before he was developing Cassidy, he was known as someone who put out prompts. Right?
Yeah,
he was known as somebody who was like, okay, this is how I'm prompting.
Right.
This is a prompt that works for me. And then this is why. These are the rules. These are the things that I'm trying to I'm trying to hit as I'm writing a prompt. So he was already somebody who was giving value before he started to create, or at least publicly. Maybe he was creating the whole time. But the story that was available about him in following him on social media was, this guy knows what he's talking about in terms of prompts. It's really helpful. And now he's doing something that he thinks will be even more helpful.
But I think we've seen that with a lot of creators, right? That's kind of not a new, that isn't a new playbook. That is you create literally, it's the definition of the old baseline definition of content marketing, right? You build your audience and then you monetize it. Monetization can mean a lot of things, but there's a lot of people who would build a product because you get the feedback, you understand, oh yeah, this is what they want. I have a large enough audience. You have that trust relationship with them, and then you kind of grow it, right? So it's it's an interesting way. And I've just like Aravind, I don't think he was started with content. I think it's like, Perplexity came and then it kind of grew from there. But there's different, like, that was just a different way to build your product. And we're seeing a couple of the AI creators move into that now, trying to get products, because they've heard, like, they've built the audience, but they've heard what your audience, like the audience they built, they found a problem that audience had, and then they kind of built something around that. And in this case, it was a product, but it could be a service, could be something like, that's why some people love building courses. This is the pain point my audience has. This is why we're gonna launch it, because you get all that feedback.
And well, that's what I was just about to say. Building that community, having that ability for people to feel like their voice can be heard, that if they jump on a Discord or other areas, that they can get their voice in there, goes both ways. Not only does that make the user feel like they're part of the gang, part of the group, right? I'm part of building this. And so that makes me feel like I want to tell more people and use this product. But obviously you're getting the feedback, and it's on, the onus is on the company to take that feedback and make pivots and iterations. Cassidy, we've seen, I'm just using them as an example, has changed their pricing models a couple times, I think. Recently we saw one a couple months ago when our team was looking at it, and they were like, look, we're gonna charge, versus tokens versus this versus that. That's all based on feedback from the users and what they're saying they like or don't like, because ultimately it does go back to the main thing, which is this helpful? And just because you launch one way, Perplexity, I think another ones, they were a research tool initially, and it took a pivot. OpenAI clearly was not moving in the direction they're moving in today 3 years ago. It's not where their brain was, but the audience responded. Their potential base responded and said, oh, this would be really helpful in this area, that. And so they're pivoting. And so what they originally hit the market with may not be exactly what they have today, but hopefully that's because they're taking that feedback and they're having those iteration loops to make sure that they're making the product even more helpful to their end user.
So the question I have always there is, because like any other company, that would be the play. Most companies should have that play. You take your feedback and you pivot that way. Because a lot of these AI labs are, remember the original point where everybody was saying we want to get to AGI, right? That is the goal. And in some cases now it's like ASI. So one could say, it's like, remember when they launched GPTs, and then let's go back to plugins, then the plugin store, then there's supposed to be some revenue sharing with custom GPTs, and that's not happening at all. And everyone made a big deal. It's like, this is the new app store. On that path to AGI, I'm curious to see, like, are they pivoting to what customers want, or are they just releasing products as a byproduct of that path to AGI? Because unlike any AI labs, if you look at Google Trends, everything, they dominate entirely in terms of outside the bubble, dominate it. Like everybody, a lot of people know ChatGPT equals AI. That is undeniable. Just with every single business I talk, like Anthropic, any of these companies, it's like, I don't know. I just know Copilot, but they run ChatGPT, or I know ChatGPT. So I'm curious, is it them trying to pivot, or is it like, we don't care, here's the 5 levels of AI, that's where we're going. If it happens, we're just going to provide products. Cool, we're making money, but it doesn't matter. So I'm not sure if there's, everyone's saying AGI, so I'm assuming there's the path. But are they like a typical company where you would have to pivot if, let's say, you go IPO, you're trying to pivot to ensure that your stakeholders, your shareholders get that, and like you make like $1 bazillion like Meta?
Yeah, Carl, I think that's a great viewpoint, or a great analysis, because if you do break it down, and custom GPTs is a fantastic example, they if everything is just going to AGI, then yeah, they don't have to pivot, because all they need is that layer of, this is how we can bring out the feature that we need to achieve our goals, and this is how we can monetize it, or this is how we can create more engagement, this is how we get more users onto the platform, and things like that. Now, I do think they may have parallel plans, or plans that, that work in tandem, that have a certain synergy, because we can see that from things like Canvas and work with apps and things like that. Those are total on the back end. That's definitely follows in their plan, and I think you presented that to us a couple months ago, along their 5 steps, right? And then we can see this other layer. This is, I guess, your user interface, right? Your user layer, where we're seeing here, this is how everybody can interact with it. We've taken our lessons that we've learned from the virality of the chat interface, the conversational interaction, and things like that. And we're creating a platform that we can draw more users into. Because once you're on the platform, once you've created everything that that people need to accomplish their goals, or at least the vast majority, there's no reason to leave, right? And once you're in the ecosystem, and Microsoft has taught us that over the last few decades, is once you're in it, you're usually stuck in it, right? It's really hard to remove yourself from that ecosystem and go commit to something else.
Goddamn SharePoint.
Right.
It's such an important point. As Salesforce is the same, right? So once you're in the system, the benefit of leaving needs to massively outweigh the effort of leaving, right? And for most circumstances in the past 10, 20 years, those were not true. What I think is interesting about AI is AI has the potential to be the equaler. Like, that feels like the opportunity for new programs, right? Because AI can actually do a bunch of the analysis that's built in, or a bunch of the actions that are built in to the system that you use now that you don't want to leave. And that, I think, is going to be really interesting in the next couple of years, just to see whether we have shifted that tipping point about effort and value, which are 2 of the 4 pillars.
Jyunmi, I wanted to ask you something. So we got a request back from one of the ITs when we presented our contract, and one of our contracts says, we're not sure because we need to deep dive into the company first. And they said, well, typically, maintenance costs for tech products equals this amount, or not this amount, but like it's more than what you're presenting. Our comeback was, we have no clue what AI will do in 3 months. So it's unfair to the company to, it's ridiculous. There's a couple points here. Unfair to the company to lock them into something that we don't know. So, and this is why we, like, for us, it's sort of like a 3 month to 6 month rolling, because we don't look at one specific tech and sit with it, because we just don't know what's going to happen. And really, that Sam Altman, like, hey, if your tech doesn't adapt or doesn't move with us, then we're going to steamroll you. I just, like, all these things, I'm just not sure this is a typical kind of play. And I know a lot of IT groups and things are now looking at it, like, this is why the Copilot's so easy. It's like, I'll just stick with Microsoft because it's Microsoft. But you're not getting the full benefit of AI. But if you want to get the full benefit, you may not want to sign that annual deal, because it's moving at a pace that's so different that what you're getting isn't, oh, yeah, I got it here, but in 3 months, there's something pretty awesome. But I've already signed it. And that's why I tell a lot of companies, do not sign the year-long Copilot contract. More so because, 1, you may be disappointed, but 2, you may be missing out on a whole bunch of other things, but you've committed your entire AI budget to Copilot. And like things like Cassidy, things like Respell, things like Runway, things like all those different tools, you could be using them that could 10x your productivity, but you're stuck with Copilot. And I'm not saying Copilot is not just completely terrible, but you're stuck with it. And it's just a button on Word, Excel, PowerPoint now. And then you, like, when you look at Word, it's like, hey, look, I just want to create my Word. I don't want to press that button. I don't want to press Excel, but I just want to do my thing. So what does that leave the company? So it's a completely different shift. And I think like this is where IT companies have to actually or IT teams have to have that different mind shift.
I think you're right. I think what this really kind of points to is the larger systemic processes, especially in larger companies. They're, when you're monolithic, you move slowly. When you're smaller, you're more agile, right? You can adapt to the changing landscape. AI changes very quickly. So how do you get your monolithic organization to start being more agile? And this can be done in multiple ways, breaking things up departmentally. But I think if they're coming to you with this, hey, we have this budget to spend for the year, and you're saying, hey, don't lock yourself in. I think that's a matter of that could even just be financial processing or financial operations at that point. It's like even if you take institutions, for example, universities and things like that, they have one time a year to make their budget requests for their department, right? And they're committed to whatever that budget's going to be. So maybe that process in it itself needs to be broken down to make it more agile, to be able to shift, for their needs, especially if they're gonna double down and really get into the AI space. That ability to make those shifts, like you said, that's going to be key to take advantage of whatever new feature or set or new technology comes out of it. So,
yeah. I'm dealing with this right now with just Canva. So not Canvas, but Canva, the company, the Australian company. It's because I just got a notification that my annual subscription is coming up. I don't want to say it's like maybe 120 a year. I might be misquoting that, but I feel like it was something like that. I'm sure I could fact check that pretty quickly. But regardless, it's coming up in the next couple of days. And so I thought to myself, like, okay, what are my thoughts on Canva? Because to your point, Carl, to your point, Jimmy, I'm committing myself personally, obviously, and I'm not a corporation. I'm talking about one license. But it's still financially relevant to me individually. And so I'm thinking like, okay, is Canva going to be still helpful to me over 2025, essentially? Because obviously I renewed later in the year. What have they brought to the table in the last year that has made it a more powerful tool? And honestly, the answers to these are all like, for me personally, there's a lot of check yeses, like, green check marks, where their AI tools suite within Canva has actually gotten better in the last year, and it actually does more things for me faster. So from the user standpoint, I'm like, hey, you know what? It is a fairly easy tool to use. They have a great interface. They're trying to make it better time and time again. People don't realize you can go create full videos on Canva and things like that they probably don't. It's like ChatGPT. They probably don't realize it can do half the things it can do. It's not just create an Instagram post anymore, platform. It's got a lot smarter. So, even from my standpoint, you look at the upgrade, the renewals and stuff, and you say, like, do I want to commit myself to a year upfront of Canva, or will there be something better in February and March that kind of handles like fall.ai, where I use Flux 1.1 Pro? Does fall solve all those needs for me, or is it perhaps, God forbid, Adobe or something like that? So I think it's an interesting conversation a lot of people are having about, where do you put your money? And if you're the companies that, back to on topic of what we're talking about today, the virality, if you're a company that's thinking about like, okay, is there going to be some new viral, technology or solution for my business in a couple of months? And if you're thinking about that and saying we're going to withhold money, I hate to be a broken record, but I say it all the time in this show. What you absolutely do have control of today is your own in-house data and your knowledge and how that's organized and a lot. Because whether you pick Carl's solution or Beth's solutions or Jimmy's or Andy's or Brian's solution, if we were all pitching you the next viral thing, all of it would need some level probably of your in-house data in order to be excellent. It'll do okay out of the box, but I guarantee you, because I do this with my clients, hey, you know what'll make this supercharged? If I have your data, because then I can make it uber personalized to you, and I can make the user experience feel like you're working within your own company, which is where things are going to have to go towards agents in 2025 anyway. So if you're thinking about where to put your money and you don't know where to do it, and you don't want to sign a year-long contract and you want to wait to see what that next viral sensation is, you don't have to just sit still. You could certainly be making inroads towards that. And that is, as I always say, clean your own house. You know, make your data better, organize it better, get rid of the stuff, clean the house out as if you were moving, but do it digitally. You know, if you were tasked with getting out of, if your company uses Google Drive today, and let's say Google puts out a notification and says, in 2 months, we're tripling the cost per user, right? And you're tasked, you're on a task team that now has to get out of Google Drive into a new drive in 3 months. What does that look like? So never mind the fact that you're not going to leave. Now go organize it the way you would hope to, because if you were pushed to do it. These are the things I think are going to help businesses immensely, not only just what we're talking about today and workflows, but obviously as we move into agents. And yeah, we're not quite sure what that's going to look like or how much is going to be hands off in 2025, but we certainly know we're stepping in that direction. So if you want an agent to go do something for you on your desktop at work and you want to multiply that by 100 workers, how the hell are you going to do that if your stuff is a mess? What's the agent going to do for you? Make a bigger mess? Like, so these are things people can do now that doesn't require waiting on the next viral sensation.
When we think about what kinds of AI could really achieve very rapid viral growth, a lot of that depends on whether there's sharing of the output of that AI. And for example, on Perplexity and on ChatGPT, you can share a query that you have, and you can send that by, SMS, like iMessage. You can send it by email, and that introduces new people to the fact that you're using that product, and they get a sample of the work product that you've generated. So you mentioned agents, Brian. What about when the first really versatile personal agent isn't just working on my computer, but can work through all of my communication channels and carries with it the identification that it's my personal agent? And people go, wow, I want one of those. I want to use that. And there's a link right there saying, you want your own? and that sharing model with the idea of something really compelling and new, that could lead to the next viral one. I'm going to predict now that some of the most viral products are going to be personal agents that actually go out on your behalf and have a visible presence in your communications channels.
Yeah, I think it's a great prediction. And by the way, I think that's a good segue to say that we will absolutely, before the end of this year, have our predictions going into 2025, talking about what we think is coming, how people can prepare, a little bit of what we just talked about today, Andy and myself and others. I think that's going to be a big part of that. I do want to bring in this comment really quick from one of our frequent commenters, Jude, who said recycle robot equals viral. And yeah, I think if you're a longtime listener of our show, you'll get that inside joke. But I do love a good inside joke. It just lets us know, warms my heart, because it lets us know we have supporters who come back over and over again and have listened to us talk so much that they know the jokes about Carl's recycle robot that he's no doubt building in his garage and in Canada, and trying to make sure it can take out the recycling for him. So with that in mind, I think we'll wrap today up, and we'll get into we'll talk about what's coming up tomorrow. So tomorrow is Wednesday. We always talk about the news that inspired us, we thought was interesting individually, and then we bring that to the show. 90% of the time, we don't know what each of us is going to share, which always makes it fun for the show. Last week, we got into a bit of a not rhyming, but yeah. Anyway, if you want a good laugh,
Brian, it's all about the weave.
The weave. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of what it was. I was like, what do we call that? The weave. God, yeah. Andy still made me laugh. I'm still laughing about Andy from last Wednesday. So come back tomorrow. We always have a good time on Wednesday. I dare say we would have a le chat. So there's a little bit of a hint of what maybe we'll be talking about tomorrow. But that's it for today, guys. We'll wrap it up. I think it's a really interesting conversation. I think it brings a lot to it. It'll be interesting to see what some of the smaller companies do over the next few months. And do they look to this UTAUT framework that Karl was talking about? Go check out that article too, if you get a chance, by Ria. We put that in the chat, in the YouTube comments. So you can go check that out as well if you want to read the full blog. It's really, really good. Okay. Until tomorrow, we will see you guys back here for all the interesting news over the last week. Have a great day.